Hello guys. So React just dropped a new feature in version 19.2 called the activity component, and it's one of those updates, right? That looks very small, but it changes how we manage component states, especially when you're like toggling part of your application like a sidebar or tabs, right? Let me show you what it does and why I feel like it's very useful when you're building out UI components. And in this video we're going to be using a real world example of a sidebar. Okay, so what we can see on the screen is just the announcement that was done some days ago for React 19, and for this video we're just going to be focusing on the activity feature, right? So let's just jump into the documentation. So what we just have here is the activity docs. The idea around is very simple. Sometimes you want React to preserve the component state when a component is not visible, right? That's where activity comes in. Try to explain this more properly. We'll have to show an example. So we can look at the documentation real quick before we jump into actual code. It says activity lets you hide and restore the UI and internal states of children. Right. So this is a perfect example where you have your sidebar component and you just wrap your sidebar with your activity component and set your mode to visibility, right? So the mode have basically setting your mode to visibility. I think that's just the basics of working with this. Let's look at documentation again. You can use the activity to hide part of your application. Activity mode, this is a boolean variable, showing sidebar visible hidden. When an activity boundary is hidden, the React to visually hide its children using the display non-CSS property. It will also destroy their effect, cleaning up any active subscriptions. While hidden, children still renders in response to new props. Than the rest of its contents, right? So when the boundary or when a particular component becomes visible again, React will review the children with the previous state restored and recreate their effect. Yeah, so this is just law of what I just wanted to just go through this, but I'll show you an actual example um of what this actually says. And I'll also leave a link to the documentation for people that want to check out the docs. So let's just jump into little app I had to set up just for this video. As you can see here right now, we have our sidebar, right? We have a button that opens and closes our sidebar. Then we have a toggle to toggle our activity on and off. Then what we just have here is a sidebar that has um different sections. We have the space, portal, and support. Then for the support part of our sidebar, we have a form that takes in the project name and also describe your issue. All right. So this will all make sense in a minute. So the spaces are all drop downs that have their own active states if they are open or not, right? And I'll also show you this in code. This is just trying to take you through the UI first before I open up VS Code and show you how we did this. So we have the support, like I said, is a form, and we will all be working with that. So now look at this real quick. This is an actual sidebar. This is how a sidebar works. And just to show you the example of how React to actually do this. So we have a sidebar with different drop downs, right? So if I say spaces is open, I want portal to also be open, right? Then for our support, I'm going to impute project name. I'm going to call this OpenAI Sora. That will be the project name, right? Then describe your issue. We could just say create videos from user prompts. This is just dummy text, right? Um, prompt PT. Yeah, create videos from user prompts, right? Now, our sidebar is open, and in a regular React application, once this sidebar closes, that particular state is being destroyed. We will lose access to the particular value of the form. We will lose access to the particular toggled part of our sidebar, right? So once we close this, our sidebar is being taken out of the DOM, right? It's already destroyed. We don't have access to the state anymore because now, once you open up the sidebar again, we're trying to initialize or reintroduce or re-render, or we're trying to, or we are re-rendering it back to our DOM. At that point, we've lost the state, right? The previous state of our sidebar. If you open up the support, we don't have access to the quick feedback. We don't have access to what was open before. We know we had portals open and that space was also open. All right. So now let me show you the example with activity. So once we toggle activity on and we say portal should be open and support, our support form is going to take, we call this open AI, right? open AI Sora, then describe your issue. Sora isn't working. You have typos here, right? Sora isn't working as expected. So once we do this, remember our activity is on. So this is just toggling our activity on. And I will show you all this in code, what we're trying to do here. But I just want to show you the example first. So you see the idea around activity. So once we close the sidebar and we open it back, you can notice how our state is still being preserved. All right. Our state is still being preserved because why? Like the documentation says here, right? What we're just doing here, we're saying, okay, we're just using the CSS property of display none, right? So once it's reintroduced or once it's visible again, React will review the children with its previous state restored and recreate its effects. So that's exactly what's happening here. So we're closing the sidebar and opening it back. We have access to our states. We didn't have to do anything extra to preserve the state of our sidebar. Right. So this is just one example. And to jump into code, let me quickly bring VS Code over here. Okay. So let's take a look at the code of how we did this. Okay. So I think to make this look good, we're just going to zoom in a little bit and so we can see our code. So what we just have here is a React application. Nothing too fancy. Let's quickly import this. Let's quickly format this properly. Right. So we just have a use state which basically represents um all our drop downs, right? Which is spaces, portals, and supports. Then we have selected item, form data. So those are just the states that we have here. Then we have a method basically toggles the section to open it and close it, which is straightforward. Then we have our undo form change, which is used for our form, right? So now, if you see what we did here, basically, we are importing the activity, right, from React. So now, this is available in React 19.2, so you can import it directly, all right? And what we have here is just the JSX, nothing too important. So I want to take you to the part where we are doing the actual magic with activity. Okay. So once we go down to our activity tutorial, which is our parents component over here, all right, you can see what we're doing here. So we're saying once activity mode is sidebar is open, right, visible, hidden, right, then um we're also having a conditional rendering where we say, okay, if sidebar is open, we're just going to show the sidebar. So now we have a state, another state, which is basically saying, okay, is use activity on or off. Now, the reason why we are doing this extra layer or this extra step is just because we have a toggle, right? So the toggle is just a Boolean value that checks and see, okay, is this true? If it's true, right? If it's toggle that we want to use activity, then wrap activity around our sidebar so that it preserves our state. So this is just the line of code, right, to preserve the state of our component. And that is just what we did to make this work. And we on the other hand, we have a sidebar which is just a regular sidebar, which is not going to preserve our state. This is how we basically have our sidebar in a React application, right? Without using the activity components. So okay, so looking at our example again, right? Once we close it, it opens. Then once we see activity off, we reset our form, right? Then it doesn't preserve our state anymore at this point. We don't even know what was open and what was not open. So once we close it, it resets back. That is your regular default state for your React components, obviously. Right. So once activity is on, React keeps the sidebar tree in memory, so your component state doesn't reset, right? But once the activity goes off, React tears it down. All right, exactly what we just saw happen now. So that's the new React activity component in action. Um, it's very powerful, right? Especially for UI patterns like drawers, modals, multiple tabs that has forms where you don't want user to actually lose progress. If you found this video useful, please subscribe. I make more shorts front end breakdown on this channel, and make sure you check out my other videos.